Hawks on the Wire is a podcast produced by Three Hawks Haven, an e-card company where love, kindness, and connection are designed in each e-card. The story you're about to hear, shared by Joan's guest, will be a story from someone's life, their personal experience. By learning from stories just like this, Three Hawks Haven is able to create beautiful and moving e-cards that can really touch someone's heart. In times of celebration or in the tougher times of life, Three Hawks Haven has e-cards for most any occasion, including some you just can't find anywhere else. You can shop for all their e-cards by going to their website, threehawkshaven.com. Now to Hawks on the Wire with your host, Joan.
Hi, this is Joan, and welcome to Hawks on the Wire. Today we are talking to Wendy Sharp. Wendy has made a dream come true for herself by relocating to the state of Florida. Wendy is a hospice nurse, registered nurse, and she has 4 adult children, 2 granddaughters. Some of her hobbies: she loves to write, loves to walk on the beach, and she really loves to spend time with her dogs. So, Wendy, how are you doing, beautiful lady?
I'm fabulous, Joan. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's so good to have you here today. Thank you so much.
I'm happy to be here.
Good. So, we want to talk about this dream that you made come true. And you had that dream, I think, for several years, correct?
I did. I began coming to Florida as a child. My grandparents owned a home in St. Pete Beach. And so every year when GE had their 2-week shutdown, my parents brought us all down. And so I fell in love with the beach at a very early age. Um, and I started wanting to move here really probably in my 30s. I really felt like I needed to do that at some point. I was married at the time. I knew my husband really wouldn't want to do that. And then after my divorce, I realized, well, now I can do what I want to do. So by the time I was 40, I knew that I wanted to move here. And I'm 56 now. So that took 16 years to actually make that happen. 15, we'll say. Yeah.
Yes, but you have made it happen. And I commend you for that because we are creatures of habit. Tell me and our listeners, why did you particularly want to move to Florida?
Well, I I needed to break up with winter. It was a bad relationship. I hurt when I get cold. I get angry when I get very cold. I am not the person I want to be when it's very cold outside, and so that is an issue. I wanted to be somewhere warm. There are warm places that aren't Florida. Obviously, Florida had the nostalgia element for me. I'd come down here as a child. I did look at other places. I looked at South Carolina, and that same summer, I then came down to the Gulf Coast, and the plane landed, and we went out to a restaurant, and we were sitting on this dock at a restaurant, and within moments, I knew, okay, stop messing around. This feels like home to you. So, yeah, I wanted to be where it felt like home and where I didn't have to deal with winter.
Very good. Well, tell me, did you have, I know you did, you would have had to have some fears that kind of held you back. That's a big deal to move out of state.
Yeah, it is. I think, as you know, Joan, I'm single and have been for quite a while. And most people, when they relocate to a new state, they don't do that entirely by themselves, right? They have a partner who goes with them. Um, or if their kids are young and willing, maybe one of their kids might move down there with them. But I knew that my kids did not want to live in Florida. And so I knew that was part of why I waited, right? I had to wait until my kids were all independent and on their own before I could leave, because I certainly felt like I wanted to provide a roof over their heads until they could do that for themselves. And so it was sort of a vague someday for a while. And then I had a friend who looked at me one day and she said, "You need to set a date and you need to tell your kids this is happening. This is when it's happening, because otherwise they're going to just think you're going to stay forever." And that was good, not just for my kids, but for me, because it turned it from something I'm going to do someday into something I'm going to do no later than this date. And so I did that. I set the date of 2020. I knew I was going to be 55 in 2020, and I liked the numbers. That felt really good to me. My son should be graduated from college by that time. And so I made that decision. It was probably 2016, 2017 when I decided it was going to be 2020 or bust. And so what was I afraid of? Well, I was afraid of missing my children terribly. I was afraid of deciding it might be the wrong choice. But I think what you have to realize when you make a big leap like this is you can always change your mind. I think that's one of the graces of being older, is that you recognize that there are millions of decisions you make in your life, and sometimes they're great decisions and sometimes they aren't, but none of them are really permanent, because you can decide later, you know what, I want to do this now instead. And I think giving yourself permission to do something and find out it wasn't so smart is key when you take a leap. You and I spoke earlier about fear and longing. I think any big dream has both of those elements in it. You long for something, but you're afraid. You're afraid you'll fail. You're afraid it won't work. You're afraid you'll regret it. So you've got fear and longing. And anytime you have two things on opposite ends of the spectrum like that, you're stuck in the middle and you don't move. And that's how big dreams can stay someday forever. So I do think part of overcoming that fear is to make it into a project that has a deadline. And then you just kind of do everything you need to do to get there. And you focus on what you need to do tomorrow and what you need to do next week and what you need to get accomplished in the short run. And then little by little, you get closer and closer to making that dream happen.
Very good, Wendy. And I totally agree. Choices are always good. It's always good to know that you have choices and that you can change your mind. One thing I can really relate to is when you said you went and you talked with your kids. How did that feel? I'm a mom too, and I have to admit, sometimes talking with my children can be harder about letting them know what I want to do than it is with, simply telling a girlfriend. So
Yeah.
how did that feel to, finally, kind of stand up and say, "Hey kids, this is what I want to do"?
Yeah. I mean, I think that I was really shocked when I realized my kids were not going to disperse. Okay. My thought about my kids, and based on conversations I had with them when they were young, was that they had dreams that were going to take them away from Kentucky. So I never imagined I would be, now see, this is going to make me emotional, Joni. I never imagined I would be leaving them when it was someday. So that was hard. That was hard to say, well, this is my dream and I'm going to do it. And it's going to mean putting my children and my time with them in the rearview mirror. That was hard. But again, that same friend that I sat at dinner with, she said, "Wendy, you are giving and giving and giving to everybody around you. And she said, you love that, and I'm sure they love that you do that. But unless you break away and go do this thing that is calling to you, you will never become this person and create this life that you want for yourself. So that was really powerful advice. I was so grateful to her for saying that to me. But yeah, it was hard. It was hard.
Your friend was speaking your truth to you, wasn't she?
Yeah, sometimes that's what you need. You need friends that will speak your truth to you when you've forgotten what it is, right? Because sometimes we forget. And and I've got to say this about my kids. Not one of them ever acted like I was a bad mom for wanting to do this. I'm so proud of them, and I'm so proud of me for raising them, right? Isn't that the conceit that we have as mothers? When our kids turn into wonderful people, to go, wow, what a great human being that I raised. And so right up until the moment I left, it was support, support, support. They did a lot to help me, and they were wonderful. And it really wasn't until probably 3 months in after I had left that there was some honest hurt that I got from my kids, them being able to say it hurt me that you left, and that really hurt me to hear that. Yes. But you know what? We don't grow if we never stretch, and stretching can be painful. Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, I so appreciate your honesty. And it had to been on a practical side. You had a house to sell, correct?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Things and to move stuff, your material possessions and your dogs.
Yep. Yeah, so that was tricky. The logistics of that involved getting a pod, because I was going to be living temporarily with a friend down here, and I couldn't bring all my stuff to her house. So I got a pod. The pod company stores your stuff for you, so you can load it slowly. They store it for you, and then when you're ready, you call them up and they deliver it to your new home. So that really made that a lot easier. I don't think my friend, when she moved down, I do have a friend who moved down here too. As you know, Teresa's down here. And when she moved, she didn't do that. She came down, found a house, and moved from one house into her forever home. But I wanted time to really think about where I wanted to live and what that was going to be like for me. So it was just so awesome that I had that luxury, because she provided a safe haven for me to live in when I came down. The alternative would have been to get an apartment. So if you don't have a friend who lives where you're going to move to, I would encourage you to rent for a while. Because when you move into an entirely new community, you don't really know the layout. And there's intangibles about a new community, right? How does it feel? What are the people like in this neighborhood versus that neighborhood? What is the best location? What's going to fit me the best? And certainly you can trust spirit to guide you and lead you where you need to be. But if you're a planner and a thinker and a process person like I am, I just really wanted to gather more information before I made that plunge and bought a home. And it worked beautifully for me. The home that I am in now is everything I could want it to be. And my dear friend came down to visit me. And when she walked in and looked around, this really moved me. She walked in and looked around my home. And she looked at me and she said, "Wendy, you did it. You did it." And I hugged her and I started crying. We're both crying. I said, "I know, I did it. I did it." So I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. And it's amazing. Spirit is amazing. The way that it takes your dream and your desire and helps you manifest it in the real world. So I'm so grateful.
Yes. I think you are amazing, beautiful lady. You did do it. And good for you. And you know, another reason I admire your plan to get an apartment for a little bit is back to those choices that you said, or perhaps you would change your mind. And perhaps with your children, you all being so close and
Right.
missing them and them missing you. You know, an apartment psychologically to me is not as permanent as a forever
That's
home.
right. That's right. Yeah. It gives you time to be sure. Now, that being said, I don't think that you're going to take a leap of this size unless you feel pretty sure. But I certainly don't think anyone wants to buy a house somewhere and then realize it's not where they wanted to be. It's really hard to get out of that at that point.
Yes. Well,
Although not right now. Right now you can sell a house with like that. But the market's not always like that.
well, and back to you talking about like a personality of a community. How has it been making new friends? You're in a whole new state and on.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm blessed in my career because I do not have a stay-at-home profession. I have to go out. There's no getting around it. And so I have become somewhat close to a couple of coworkers, and I've made connections with patient family members over time. You know, that's a very delicate balance, right? Because they're vulnerable, and you certainly don't want to cross a line with them. But every so often, you meet someone who's a patient family member, and you realize, oh, this is someone God wants me to have an ongoing relationship with, right? And so I have a couple of those. I don't really socialize with them, but I do talk to them. Because with the pandemic, there's not a lot of socializing happening. There just isn't. I'm really lucky, Joan. I can forge intimacy fairly quickly. So I can take away from a brief encounter a feeling that I've connected with that person, and that feeds me and makes me feel loved and loving. So even if I'm just walking on a beach and spend 15 minutes talking to a fellow dog owner, you know, just that loving interaction makes you feel like you're part of the whole, right? But as far as making good friends that I'm going out with on Saturday nights to have dinner with, no, that has not happened yet. But I think the pandemic is kind of interfering with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But you know, those little encounters you're talking about with people on the beach or out at the grocery store or whatever, they really can be priceless. And I'm
Yeah,
so glad that you bring that up, you know, so that we can have that awareness about our life.
yeah.
That's yes.
And I like myself, Joan. I like spending time with Wendy.
Good.
Um,
Very
you
good.
know, I enjoy my dogs, and I enjoy sitting here on my lanai, looking at the water, listening to the seagulls laughing, and I don't, and I can curl up with a good book. So I'm not someone who requires a bunch of companions every weekend to hang out with. And so certainly I think you have to know yourself. If you're going to relocate somewhere, you have to be prepared for a dry spell in terms of friendships. I mean, that's just real. And that is why I think people tend to move, to be more likely to move when they have a partner, because they know they'll have somebody to do those things with. I have Teresa, though. You know, Teresa lives down here. So she and I did some running around. She's hurt right now. She's not able to get out much. But she certainly went shopping with me when I was looking for things, and, you know, went house hunting with me. So having her here made that process a lot better than it probably would have been without her.
That's wonderful. Friends are truly wonderful, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Very good. And I was wondering about the finding like a dentist or a doctor, that type of thing.
That is that, you know, the minutia, the logistics of maintaining a 56-year-old body, right? Because there's all these things that you're supposed to do to take care of yourself. And I really have not done great with that. I'm very healthy, so I haven't really needed to see a doctor. But this year I'm due for a colonoscopy. So I'm going to have to find someone to order that for me. I need to get my mammogram. I need to get my annual pelvic exam, all of the things that you are supposed to do to take care of yourself as a woman. I need to get that done. And I just have been so busy working that I have not taken that time to get that done. The only services that I've gotten myself done, I did find someone who could do my dog's nails. So I found a groomer to cut my dog's nails. It shows you where your priorities are. And I found someone to work on my car, because without a car, I can't work. So yeah, but I mean, it's on my radar. I'm working toward getting those things done. One of the things I think a lot of people do when they move to Florida is they wait until they're retired. And I want to touch on that just a little bit, because I could have done that. I could have waited until I retired to move down here. My kids and my grandkids would have been older, right? Might have been easier to make that move, retired. But the reason I did not do that is that I felt that when I'm younger and working, it would be easier for me to integrate myself into my community, to get familiar with things. Joni, we work with older people in our profession. And what I know about a 7-year-old driving a car in a neighborhood for the first time, that can be really overwhelming and unsettling. And I didn't want to be 70 and trying to find my way in a dark neighborhood. I didn't want to do that. And so I felt like I needed, while I was still young enough and healthy enough to make my way without getting overwhelmed, I needed to do it sooner rather than later. And then I met a gentleman at a friend's house right before I left, and I told him what I was doing, and he had lived down here. And he said, "You are so smart to do that." He said, "I know so many people who move down here after they retire, and then within 2 or 3 years, one of them becomes ill or passes, and they end up having to move back to live near their kids because they can't do it down here by themselves." And, I hadn't really thought about that, but that is true. He said, "If you move now, you'll probably get 20 good years down there. And, if you wait, then you're cutting into that time to live your dream."
Yes. And that's it, to live your dream. Very good. And as far as Wendy, do you feel like it's changed you? I know you said, you've been stretched, you've grown. Do you feel like you're finding yourself more? Are you much different than the Wendy in Kentucky?
I feel affirmed. I feel like I am discovering strengths within myself, and I'm I don't know, I'm really focusing more on me than I ever have in my life. And sometimes that's good, and maybe sometimes that's not as good, but I'm getting an opportunity to interact with new people, and the work that I'm doing brings me so much joy. And you, again, you're a hospice nurse, yeah. Joan, you know that there are many sacred moments in that work. And I would not be doing this job in Kentucky. I would not have left the company I worked for 30 years because I was very comfortable there.
Yes.
And if I stayed there, I would have just continued in the status quo. So by moving here, I was able to become a hospice nurse. The other day, I was at a patient's home, and she was dying of lung cancer, and she was short of air. And I sat down with her and her daughter. She really wasn't with us anymore. She was ready to go. And I held her hand, and I sang to her. I chanted with her. And then I stood up, and the daughter had stepped back into the room, and she saw me singing. And I stood up behind my patient, and I began doing energy work with her. And I looked at the daughter. I said, "Is it all right with you if I do some alternative therapy with your mom?" And she said, "Oh, yes, go ahead." And so I did that for a little while, and I climbed up in the bed with her. Because she was in an odd position, so I couldn't really get around her the way I needed to. And then I went and sat at the kitchen table. I was waiting for someone to come and help me to give her a bath. And I was talking to the son, letting him know that I felt that she was comfortable. And then I just knew, and my head turned, and she had gone. And, the daughter was so grateful. And she said, "I just saw her relax when you were working with her." To be able to have that experience, to be able to participate in that sacred process with someone, you can't put a price on that. That is priceless. That is such an honor and such a gift. And so I am eternally grateful that I made this leap, that I jumped, and that I've landed exactly where Spirit wants me to be.
Yes.
So.
And I heard a speaker, oh gosh, a few weeks ago. And this is kind of what you're doing, Wendy. And I feel like I get to do that with my life too, no matter if I'm working as a nurse or I'm working as a podcaster, as a hawk.
Right.
We are out with people. This speaker said, a new chance to fall in love with people every day.
Yeah.
And I just love that philosophy. And you're living that. And kudos to you, beautiful lady.
It's wonderful.
And every door seemed to open for you, for this decision. I know it was challenging. And I know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but I think that you and I would agree that if you set your intention and you hold that in your heart, that you will find the doors do keep opening.
Very
you just have to keep moving forward. When you step, the bridge appears. So you have to just lift your foot up and step forward and know that the ground will be under you. The ground is always there when you fall.
That's true too. That's wonderful advice, though. Would you do it again? Would you recommend people? Really, through your talk here, you're recommending, of course, follow your dream. Listen.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think every journey starts with knowing yourself. You don't know where you want to go if you have no idea who you are and what you want. I think an awful lot of us know what we don't want. We don't always think about what we do want. And it's okay that we focus sometimes on what we don't want. Like, I knew I didn't want to be cold. But you also need to figure out, what do you want? And once you figure that out, then how will you feel when you have it? And hold that feeling in your heart and know that that's what's coming to you, and keep moving toward that, because sometimes it's going to be hard. Some of the stuff you have to do to make a dream happen are hard and painful and scary. Kind of like giving birth, right? Making a dream come true is like giving birth. So I was pregnant with this dream of living here for years. And then last year, as I was getting ready to move, it was like, oh, I'm in transition. It's time to start pushing. I've got to push now, and it is scary and messy, and painful. And sometimes the people that get hurt when you are living a dream are not you. Sometimes you have to hurt people around you who maybe don't understand, or they're just sad because they're losing your presence in their life. If you're a good person with a rich, full life, you walking away is going to leave a hole, and you have to own that. You have to acknowledge, okay, this thing I'm doing, is going to hurt people. And that's really hard. If you're a pleaser and you want to make people happy, the idea that you're hurting people who love you by living your dream, that's hard. But you also have to know that everything unfolds exactly as it is supposed to. And that if people they're stretching too, right? And so when you leave and you leave that hole, then they're going to grow and fill it in with something new that they would never have done if you had not been there.
Good point.
Leaving my daughter was the hardest thing. And I was driving down the road. I drove to Bardstown every day in Kentucky. And there was a tree off to one side in a field. And it had sort of an odd shape. And then when winter came, I saw that it really wasn't one tree. It was two trees. It was a big mother tree and a smaller tree of the same species, right? Her daughter. And the tree that was growing in the shadow of the larger tree was misshapen, right? It was never going to fill in on the other side because it didn't have to. And it couldn't because it was overshadowed by this bigger tree. And that was fine. You know, they were beautiful together. But once I left my daughter's arena, you know, her area, and left her to be who she was, she's going to be able to become a much more balanced, full version of herself than maybe she would have if I had stayed. So that brought me some comfort.
That's a beautiful story. Just a way.
Yeah.
And you tell your children that Joan, one of the Hawks, I think they're incredible people. What do you all do to, because I know you miss each other. So to kind of fill the hole and to be part of each other's lives.
Yeah. Well, we video call. And my daughter came down for her first visit a couple of weeks ago, brought her daughters, my grandchildren, her husband, and one of her friends, and they spent a week, and I took the week off, and we had lots of wonderful time together, and that was awesome. But she and I talk probably, I'd say 3 or 4 times a week. We'll talk on the phone, not every day, but a lot. My sons and I talk probably every week for a little while. Last night, my son and I watched a show together. So we got on the phone and we did a video call so he could see me and I could see him. And then we synchronized our Netflix and we started the show at the same time because he lived with me before I moved down here, and we used to watch television together. Because I was grocery shopping on the way home last night, and there was I was in the meat aisle, the canned meat aisle, and I used to buy lots of canned chicken for him because that's what he liked to cook with. And so when I saw those cans of chicken, I'm like, oh, I miss Dennis. And I took a picture of the chicken and I sent it to him. And I said, I miss you. And he said, I miss you too. And so we arranged to talk last night and we watched TV together.
That's I have never heard of that. That is a great suggestion for some people.
Yeah. So there are ways, thank God for really what the pandemic did is it taught all of us that you do not have to be in the same physical place with someone to connect with them in a loving way. You know, I'm looking at your beautiful face right now, and I just feel like we're together. And I just love you so much, you know, so you don't have to be in the same room or the same state to have close relationships with people. So that's awesome.
It is awesome. Oh, and you have done wonderful with this interview. I thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Anything else you think that you would like to tell our listeners, or anything come to mind?
I guess my core philosophy, and I'm sure I've said this to you before, I've said it many times to many people. Every day we have to make a choice between choosing to act from a place of love or act from a place of fear. And in my experience, if you choose based on love, you're not going to go wrong. If you make your decisions based on fear, you're likely to have regret. And when I say choose from a place of love, it's not just about loving other people. It's about loving you and doing what you love. And so you have to make choices from a place of love. And as long as you're doing that, you won't be doing the wrong thing. So
that is excellent advice. Excellent. Thank you so much, beautiful.
You're welcome.
And I want to thank our dear listeners for being with us. It's always so good to be with you. And remember, we do have e-cards for all kinds of occasions if you would like to send one and brighten somebody's day. But also remember to hit the subscribe button. That will doesn't cost you anything, and the Hawks would love for you to visit our podcast and listen again. And also, one other thing, if you do have a story, your story that you would love to share, please contact us at 3hawkshaven.com and send us your email. The Hawks would love to hear your story. Thank you so much.